James Shaw.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I rise on behalf of the Green Party of this third reading of the KiwiSaver Budget Measures Bill. Mr. Speaker, I am an opposition member of Parliament, and I don't like being oppositional for the sake of it. You know, I don't believe in tribalism, but as a member of the opposition, I do believe that my role is to challenge the government and to hold them to account. And so during the course of this debate, I've actually tried to treat this as an actual debate where we actually try to find out what the government is thinking. And so I have asked a number of questions, I think in a fairly reasonable tone, and I think that they're fairly reasonable questions. And I do want to acknowledge that some of those questions have been responded to. So I'd like to start by just responding to some of those questions. One of the questions that I asked was, why would you cut the kickstart for KiwiSaver now rather than the member tax credit, or reduce the member tax credit, when that would both save more money and keep in place the incentive that most people actually recognise? And Nick Smith did respond to that. He said that we're doing it now because we want to incentivise people not just for opening an account, but for actual savings, which is a pretty reasonable response. I understand that. But if people are responding to opening the scheme because of the $1,000 kickstart, then what you can predict is that fewer people are actually going to be opening the account in the future. And what we know is that there are a lot of people, aspirational people, who aren't earning a great deal now but hope to earn more in the future, who have opened accounts because of the Kickstart program. They may be dormant at the moment, but these are people who want to earn more in the future and can see a pathway that when they will, they'll have at least a little bit put away to start with. The second question that I asked was, did the government consider leaving the Kickstart in place for a period of time, say 6, 12, 18 months, to enable people to have the opportunity who aren't currently enrolled to enrol, or to enable people who are partially through the process of enrolling to have a chance to actually complete their enrolment. And again, Minister Smith said, well, we didn't want to rush to take advantage of the program. If we didn't want people to take advantage of the program, we wouldn't have set it up in the first place. That's the whole point of the incentive scheme. It's to get people to take advantage of the program. So to me, that argument holds no weight. Related to that, why cut the KiwiSaver now, but delay the rest of the hardship budget package? So in other words, why take away this now and give people that sort of gap where they're kind of screwed from both ends? And somebody referred to this as middle class welfare. But can I just say, that question was not answered by any speaker from the government side at any point during this debate. And that leads me to the other 5 questions, which remain unanswered. And as I said, I think I've tried to ask, these are pretty reasonable questions, right? And in the spirit of holding the government to account, and at the very least finding out what they're thinking during the course of the debate, no one has even attempted to try and respond to these questions. So I'll ask them again. New Zealand is 22nd out of 24 OECD countries for savings. Cutting the KiwiSaver incentive reduces the savings rate. What is the government's plan to increase savings? There is no plan. Well, there doesn't seem to be a plan. We haven't heard one yet. Next question. The ANZ chief economist says that removing the KiwiSaver incentive will reduce the rate of take-up. What is the plan to maintain or increase the rate of take-up in KiwiSaver? I have not heard an answer to that question. There is no plan. Next question. How does reducing the KiwiSaver take-up rate impact intergenerational equity of issues relating to today's working parents essentially paying for 3 generations worth of costs? How does it deal with a change in the dependency ratio from 7-to-1 today to 2-to-1 in 30 years' time? No one has responded to that question. Next question. The government is reducing the short-term deficit by raiding New Zealand's retirement scheme again. What is the plan for long-term financial sustainability? Nobody has responded to that question. So I know that it's a Saturday, and I know that we're under urgency, and not all that many people watch Parliament TV, and there have been a few people in the gallery, and thank you for coming and watching. But it seems extraordinary to me that we could pass a piece of legislation of this much importance to this many New Zealanders, which is about the long-term financial viability of the country and of its residents, and receive no answers to any of those questions. The government is being completely unaccountable in passing this legislation. It is lazy not to be responding to these questions. It is arrogant to be relying on your numbers rather than attempting to respond to these questions. I think that, like I said before, sir, I think that these are reasonable questions, and I've tried to ask them in a reasonable way, and I think I've asked most of them about 4 or 5 times, just in case anybody wanted to actually respond to them. There are only a couple of pieces of evidence, of actual evidence, that we've seen in the House today in relation to this bill. One is the regulatory impact statement. And in the regulatory impact statement, it says in 3 or 4 different places that they did not consider any of the impacts of this legislation beyond the financial impact on the government's books. In other words, we have no idea what this is going to do to New Zealand's savings, to the New Zealand population, or anything other than the impact on the government's books. We have no idea what the impact is. The other piece of information that we've got is a 2011 report from Inland Revenue, which said that to remove the incentive would gut the program. So we've seen no positive arguments other than to get the government's books back into black, an admirable objective, and I'm fine with that. Well, I'm fine with that notion. But other than that, we've seen no evidence relating to anything else in terms of the impacts of this scheme. And the only evidence we have seen is that it will have a negative impact. And for all those reasons, the Green Party cannot support this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker. Fletcher.